This week, three things happened in Washington. Politicians on both sides declared victories, held press conferences, sent fundraising emails, posted on social media about what they want. And the American people absorbed three separate injuries that will not heal quickly. I want to read you the verdict. Not the political verdict, the constitutional one. Case name, People versus Politiking. Finding, we the people lost. Here's what happened. Here's what it cost. And here's why the injury matters more than the score. On February 28, 2026, the United States launched military operations against Iran. No congressional vote, no declaration of war, no authorization. The War Powers Resolutions of 1973 gave the president 60 days. 60 days to either get congressional authorization or withdraw. That clock expired this week, on May 1st. Here's what Congress did as the clock ran out. They went on recess. And here's what the administration did. They sent letters to congressional leaders arguing that because of a ceasefire that began on April 7th, the hostilities have terminated. The clock does not apply. The War Powers deadline is moot. Legal experts across the political spectrum responded immediately. The statute contains no provision for pausing once the deadline starts. A ceasefire is not a termination. A naval blockade that is still actively preventing Iranian ships from moving is not the absence of hostilities. American forces are still in the region, still on alert, still costing money that was never appropriated for this purpose. The administration's position is creative. They have to admit that. It is also, according to the Brennan Center for Justice, not something the War Powers Resolution accommodates by its text or by its design. Trump himself said, and these are his exact words, that the War Powers Act is totally unconstitutional. So the administration simultaneously argued the clock does not apply because hostilities terminated, and that the law itself is unconstitutional. Both cannot be true. But both were said in the same week by the same administration. Who won this fight? The administration found a legal argument creative enough to avoid confrontation with Congress. Congress went on recess without forcing the issue. War Powers resolutions were introduced. All of them failed along party lines. Who lost? 13 American families whose loved one died in a war that no elected representative ever formally authorized. The constitutional mechanism designed to make someone own that decision bypassed. The clock that was supposed to force accountability stopped by a legal argument that the law itself does not support. The score on this one, politicians, 1. The American people, 0. On April 29, 2026, the Supreme Court issued its ruling in Louisiana versus Callais. Let me tell you what that ruling actually did. Not what either side said about it, what it actually did. In 1965, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act. It was designed to end the systematic exclusion of Black Americans from the political process. Literacy tests, poll taxes, gerrymandered maps designed to dilute minority voting power, all of it prohibited. Congress reauthorized that law repeatedly, most recently 2006 with overwhelming bipartisan majority. The reauthorization passed the Senate 98-0. This week, The Supreme Court's conservative majority ruled 6-3 that Louisiana's second majority black congressional district was an unconstitutional gerrymander. Writing for the majority, Justice Samuel Alito argued that the Constitution almost never permits the government to discriminate on the basis of race. Writing in dissent, Justice Elena Kagan said something that deserves to be read slowly and carefully. She wrote, "The Voting Rights Act has been repeatedly and overwhelmingly reauthorized by the people's representatives in Congress. Only they have the right to say it is no longer needed, not the member of this court." Let me translate that into plain English. Congress made this law. Congress reauthorized this law. Congress, the elected representatives of the American people, decided repeatedly that this law was still needed. The Supreme Court, 9 unelected justices, effectively nullified it without repealing it, without going through Congress, without asking the American people through their representatives whether they wanted this protection removed. That is a separation of powers question as much as it is a voting rights question. And here's what happened within 1 hour of the ruling being released. The Republican-controlled Florida House approved an aggressively gerrymandered map that could net Republicans four additional House seats in the 2026 midterms. 1 hour. The ruling was not even a day old. Analysts project this ruling could produce the largest drop in black congressional representation since the end of Reconstruction. The last time representation dropped to that level was 1877. Who won this fight? The conservative legal movement achieved in a single ruling what it has been working toward for decades. The most significant civil rights voting protection in American history effectively nullified without a single congressional vote. Who lost? Every American voter whose representation in Congress will be redrawn before they cast a ballot in November. Every minority community whose political voice just became significantly harder to protect in court. And the principle, fragile but essential, that Congress makes the law and courts interpret it. That line moved this week. The score on this one, politicians, 1. The people, 0. 76 days. That is how long the Department of Homeland Security went without funding. The longest government shutdown in American history. TSA agents showed up to work anyway because they are essential workers, because the law requires it, because the airports do not close, because Congress cannot agree on a budget. Over 1,100 of them quit, not because they wanted to, because they had bills and children and rent and car payments. And the government that asked them to show up anyway could not tell them when their next paycheck was coming. The shutdown ended this week, April 30th. Trump signed the bill. DHS Secretary released a statement thanking DHS employees for their perseverance and resolve and patriotism. He called what happened the result of political gains from Democrats. Democrats called it the result of Republican immigration demands that threatened civil liberties. Both sides had a press conference. Both sides declared victory. Here's what neither side mentioned in their victory statement. The central disagreement that caused the shutdown, ICE and Border Patrol funding, was not resolved in the bill that ended it. Those agencies are still not funded under the agreement that was signed. That fight was deferred to a reconciliation process that has not yet happened. 76 days. 1,100 TSA agents quit. the longest shutdown in American history. The score at the end, the central question, unresolved. Both sides declared victory, and the Department of Homeland Security is now running security preparations for the FIFA World Cup at roughly 80% capacity, with critical positions unfilled and the workforce whose trust in the institution that employs them has been immeasurably damaged. Who won this fight? Nobody. Both sides got something. Neither side got what they said they were fighting for. Who lost? The 1,100 TSA agents who quit a job they believed in because the government that asked them to show up could not pay them. The travelers who waited in security lines for hours during a shutdown that was never about them. The institutions whose credibility erodes a little more every time Washington produces a 76-day crisis that results in nothing. The score on this one? Politicians won. The American people, 0. 3 fights. 3 victories for the people playing the game. 3 injuries for the people who are not. I want to name what connects them, because this is not coincidence. It is not bad luck. It is a pattern. Every one of these outcomes was produced by people optimizing for the win rather than for the governed. The administration found the most creative legal argument available to avoid a world powers confrontation with Congress. That was a political optimization, not a constitutional one. The Supreme Court's majority reinterpreted the Voting Rights Act in a way that produces maximum political advantage for the party whose president appointed 6 of its 9 justices. That is a political outcome dressed in constitutional language. The shutdown lasted 76 days, not because the underlying policy questions were generally unresolvable, but because neither side wanted to give the other a political win. The American people were the negotiating leverage, not the people being served. Each of those choices was rational inside the game being played. Each of them damaged something outside the game. And what they damaged is not abstract. It is trust. Trust in the world powers mechanism that is supposed to ensure someone is accountable for sending Americans to die. Trust in the electoral system that is supposed to ensure every American's vote carries equal weight. Trust in the basic functioning of government that is supposed to pay the people who keep us safe. Trust is not a feeling. It is a constitutional resource. A government that derives its legitimacy from the consent of the governed cannot function when the governed stop consenting. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually, conversation by conversation, shutdown by shutdown, ruling by ruling, creative legal argument by creative legal argument. The distrust that is accelerating in this country is not irrational. It is the rational response of people watching the game being played at their expense. And this is the constitutional truth that neither side will say out loud. You cannot win the game and keep the institution simultaneously. Eventually, the institution loses enough trust that winning inside it means nothing. We are not there yet, but we are closer than we were last week. The verdict? The founders were not optimists. They did not build this system assuming that the people inside it would choose governance over victory. They built it assuming the opposite: the separation of powers, the checks and balances, the supermajority requirements, the World Powers Act, the Voting Rights Act. All of it was designed to make it structurally difficult to win at the expense of everyone else. Not impossible, difficult. This week, difficult became easy. 3 times. A creative legal argument stopped the world powers clock. A 6-3 ruling nullified a law Congress reauthorized 98-0. A 76-day shutdown ended without resolving the question that caused it. Three mechanisms designed to protect the American people from the cost of political games, bypassed, nullified, exhausted in 1 week. I want to close with a question that this episode has been building toward. Not who won. We know who won. Not who lost. We know who lost. The question is, at what point does winning the fight becomes indistinguishable from losing the country? Think about that. Because a country is not its politicians. It is not its court decisions. It is not its shutdown agreements or its world powers arguments. A country is the trust of the people living in it. That trust is not infinite. It does not replenish automatically. It is earned slowly and destroyed quickly. And this week, in 3 separate fights that 3 sets of politicians declared victory, it got a little harder to earn back. Case name, People versus Politiking. Verdict, we the people lost. The record will reflect that nobody in Washington noticed. They were busy celebrating. I am mucho Barinda. This is the third voice. Constitutional analysis in plain English. Same standard, regardless of party. Always.